a hearing charity in Cornwall, says people needing hearing aids for the first time or replacement ones aren't accessing the support that they should do. Hearing Loss Cornwall also says working from home has left some deaf employees isolated, and that where they're used to face-to-face contact and they can't phone anybody. Joining us now are Clare Greenwood and Jamie Hannon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Chaos Radio. Clare, let's start with you. How big of an issue is hearing loss in Cornwall compared to the rest of the UK?
Well, it's massive. So across the UK, apparently 1 in 6 people are known to have hearing loss, but it's 1 in 5 in Cornwall. So it's quite a big percentage of people will have some form of hearing loss.
And what makes Cornwall so different in terms of the numbers? Why are we seeing more people?
I think nobody really knows the truth of that answer, but there's sort of various thoughts around this. Obviously, quite a lot of people retire to Cornwall, so we have pro rata a potentially more elderly population. So that accounts for the hearing loss due to age. And then Cornwall per se kind of promotes all the different issues that create hearing loss. So we have fishing, for example. A lot of fishermen will struggle with their hearing due to all the loud clanking on board and the vibration and things like that. We have farming. We have we used to have RF called Rose, but we have we used to have RF at more. We have called Rose now, and despite protection, and I think Jamie will come to that, people in the forces are often prone to hearing loss. Many different issues, but literally probably everything that's likely to cause hearing loss, we have it all in Cornwall. The mining traditionally as well would have caused hearing loss for some of the older people now in our population.
Yeah. Do you think Cornwall, of course, renowned for kind of some of the noisier industries like farming and fishing and things, that maybe possibly feeding into it?
Yes, absolutely. Hearing loss is caused by many things. Obviously, it can be illness, it can be accident, injury, but there are sort of lifestyle factors that definitely draw into that. And I have to add, one of the things that people don't really acknowledge enough in Cornwall is actually surfer's ear. And we have a lot of surfers in Cornwall as well. And a lot of youngsters, they start surfing and they don't actually realise literally how damaging that could be to their hearing. And it's really important that they buy the correct earplugs, not just any old earplugs, which can actually be more damaging. So if I was to leave you with one word of sort of advice at the end of this, is anybody you know that enjoys spending a lot of time in the water, but certainly surfing, really needs to invest in protecting their hearing.
Tom's here with me today, co-presenting. Tom, you're a surfer. For somebody who's not a surfer, what is surfer's ear?
So I've got it myself. I'm deaf in my left ear anyway. I was born with it. So it's fairly ironic that we're talking about this today. Hello, Clare and Jamie. Nice to see you on the show. Thanks for being on. I think I know you personally, Clare. So hello.
You do.
Yeah.
Oh, small world.
Yeah. But no, when it comes to surfers, no. Let's put that out there. So yeah, when it comes to surfer's ear, it's basically bone growing over on the inside. That's the inside of the ear, and if you don't do anything about it, it can get really bad. I've got a mild form of it myself. And it has been exactly what Clare has said. It's basically because I wasn't aware that I needed to wear earplugs, and the right ones for you. As Clare said, you can get multiple different types, so just research into it. Go to your doctors. I understand, Clare, you might want to second that, but I assume doctors will be able to put you in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, protection is basically the key here, because once you have it, it's very difficult to operate. I mean, there is that possibility, but it's your ears and the tiny bones in the ears are extremely difficult to operate on. So protection is really the key. And with our deaf awareness trainings, we gear them to obviously loads of different age groups, different lifestyles, different job roles and things. But certainly if we go into the colleges and things and to youngsters, it's like protection, look after your ears. You'll regret it if you don't when you're older. So that's the main message. It's very difficult. Well, you won't recover from it, put it that way. So protect in the first place.
Jamie's waiting very patiently there. Tom, I think you've got a question for Jamie.
Yeah, hi there, Jamie. How are you doing? All right.
So Jamie, I'm good, thank you.
Good stuff. Jamie, I understand you were in the army.
That's correct. Yeah, army and TA.
Oh wow. So just from your personal experience, how do you feel that that in itself has affected your hearing?
Back in my days when I first started, which was the late 70s, early 80s, we basically didn't have any ear protection whatsoever. It was really crude and quite basic. The only times we had to wear them was on the ranges. Outside of that, all exercises, there was absolutely nothing. We didn't have to. And obviously you've got the noise of the weapons, pyrotechnics going off. And that is what, I had 90% high tone deafness, which is speech tones. And this was caused through firing weapons and pyrotechnics for over 20 years.
Oh, wow. So when you say speech tones, obviously for those out there, that's basically the different frequencies that we hear.
That's correct. Yeah. Without having a small chart here, it's difficult to explain where they are.
Yeah. And I understand you've had a cochlear implant fitted. For those,
I had the implant. I was fortunate the criteria for the implant was lowered February 2019. Prior to that, I wasn't eligible, even though I had that extensive hearing loss. November 2019, I had the cochlear implant. It's changed my life massively. I wouldn't be here right now. I am using assistive technology for this, but I just wouldn't be able to communicate with two hearing aids. The downside for me is November up until March time, I was just getting used to it. And then I went into lockdown. So I've been shielding since March last year.
Oh, wow. And for those of people out there who don't know, how does the cochlear implant actually work?
Without having, I did show an image I sent over, but it technically bypasses it. Yeah. The fiber optic cable that you see there, and this is going to sound awful for some people, but that implant is placed under the skin near the ear, and the cable is actually, they drill a hole right into the cochlear itself, which is like the small spiral part of it. So the hearing now bypasses the direct route in, and with the external parts of the CI, which goes here, and I've got the back bit, that goes directly onto the implant itself. So now speech is going right in to the cochlear and then picking up by the brain. To start off with, it's like a very tinny, very metallic sound. But over the period of time, it gets a lot better. I mean, on my last test, my hearing is now over 90% hearing in that ear or the brain. So it's absolutely fantastic. But I am still deaf. I still lip read. When this is taken off at night, I'm 100% deaf again. So yes, I've got fantastic hearing because of it, but it doesn't mean I'm a hearing person again.
It's fascinating, Jamie, on how this has helped you so much, and I guess the developments in hearing technology over the years. I know my mum is deaf in both ears. She has hearing aids in both ears and has done since she was a kid, and I think she's felt really, really disabled during the pandemic, because not only has she not been able to kind of say go out and see people and lip read and stuff. Now everyone's wearing masks. That's a whole new issue for her, and the whole. World seems to have gone digital, and we're here on Teams chats and things, and where sometimes subtitles aren't supported, or the quality's not good enough, or the clarity's not good enough. So it's certainly, I think, a real challenge for people at the moment. Last year, Chaos TV spoke to a deaf awareness advocate who told us face masks were making her life difficult. Claire, what are we learning from people who have been working from home?
Well, obviously, you say about digital technology, that has its pluses and minuses. So it can be great in that people can control their environment more. But what we found in terms of access to technology, a lot of people, this was thrown upon them very suddenly, and a lot of deaf people haven't actually had access to iPads and things like that. Over time, we've managed to get grants, and people have managed to get hold of these. But as you saw with schools, a lot of people suddenly had to get access to these pieces of technology they didn't have. So it's been a steep learning curve. And as you say, for deaf people, some of these hearing assistive devices like Jamie uses, they're not exactly cheap. So they might have needed to get access to work help to be able to hear. So, for example, a lot of people out in the workforce will have had their workspace set up prior to COVID to enable them to actually hear through assistive devices at work. Now, suddenly, if they've been told, right, you're working from home, then that's really not being supported that well, and that's nobody's fault. It's just the way things have gone. But obviously, not everybody could have just jumped out and afforded to buy these assistive technologies. As you also said with Teams and Zoom and things like that, some of the captioning is not that reliable and can actually be embarrassing, especially in NHS circumstances where there's maybe been an inaccurate interpretation. And also, being deaf is actually extremely tiring, and I think Jamie would accept that. So for everybody else who's sort of dealing with all these stresses and strains of working from home, if you add hearing loss or deafness into that mix, then you're compounding everybody else's problems, because it's much, much harder doing a day's work on Zooms and Teams if you can't hear properly. And not everybody knows how to set up a meeting so that deaf people can read the lips well and things like that. So, I mean, we could talk for a day on this about all the challenges that have cropped up for deaf people per se. But if they're in the workforce, it's really stressful. And in NHS circumstances, a lot of staff are aware that deaf people can't lip read with the with the masks on. But of course, there are a huge number of people working in NHS services and resources who are also deaf themselves. And I feel from things that I hear that actually some of the NHS staff have struggled to work just purely because of all these new conditions that they've been put into. And again, it's nobody's fault. This is sort of very unexpected. But for every level of stress that a normal hearing person will have, then you would definitely need to magnify that several times over for anybody with a level of hearing loss. And that's whether they're a lip reader, whether they're a hearing aid wearer, but certainly the profoundly deaf BSL users, impossible really.
And something we were talking about on the show last week is because of the pandemic and less people having access to services and less people kind of going out and doing those routine appointments that they should be going to, there's a bit of a backlog or a gap in terms of people not getting hearing tests or accessing the equipment that they're entitled to. What is happening with people who need hearing aids? Is it the similar thing?
I think, and again, it's nobody's fault in the NHS. It's just they have a huge backlog. So people who might have gone for a hearing test sooner are having to wait that bit longer. Audiology teams have obviously had delays. I mean, you know, working with ears, that's actually, you know, it's quite has to be face to face, really. So that's a challenge in its own right. So yeah. No easy answer to that. I think they will pick up their services as soon as they can, but it's a problem.
Yeah. It seems to be time can hopefully improve the whole situation, I think, and people's awareness of this. I was going to ask Jamie a question. Jamie, what issues do people have with hearing issues when they face going outside on their own? Outside of their own home. Do you think that the public are receptive to their needs?
Unfortunately not. I just want to say one thing that Claire was talking about fatigue and things like that. If you think about a sentence, within that sentence, I may only pick up one or two words and I have to put the rest of the sentence together. And this is extremely tiring for all of us. Going out, yes, I go out, but I am frightened.
Oh, I think we just there we go, Jamie. I think we got you back again now. I think. Sorry, Teams dropped out there on you. Sorry about that. Carry on.
I think people are worried about going out. It's a complete nightmare with masks, and people or organisations aren't providing the clear view mask so we can still lip read. So it is a major issue, and I'll back up what Claire was saying about NHS, Cornwall Council, and any major organisation. It's just a nightmare. It really is. Even for myself, even though I've now got 90% hearing, because I'm used to lip reading, I just can't hear, and I have to higher the volume up that high. It becomes really, really difficult. I get so much background noises, which is louder than normal, which can cause all sorts of things, headache, stress. And I think a lot of other people will suffer exactly the same. The thing that, I mean, I don't, but I know many people that have hearing loss. They will not speak out. They will not tell the person that's talking that something is wrong. They didn't hear it correctly. So if they were supposed to have said yes, they might say no. They might go for a prescription. They might be at the doctor's. And we don't necessarily hear what is actually being said. And as I said earlier about trying to make up the conversation, I used to get the time wrong. Someone asked me something and I'd say, oh, it's 10 to 10. But that wasn't the question they asked me. So we laugh about it, but it's frustrating, and deaf awareness it's needed everywhere across the whole country, but in Cornwall especially, as Claire said, there's 1 in 5 people in Cornwall have some form of hearing loss. I didn't BSL, I didn't sign, so I was in between, not 100% deaf, but I couldn't hear either. So it was a difficult situation for me and many others.
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt with my own personal experience, because I'm deaf in my left ear, and I wanted to ask you a question, Jamie. Personally, do you find the actual face masks aren't just hard because of lip reading, but obviously they bring down the volume of the person talking, but also I find with the face masks, especially the kind of fashionable face masks, that actually they kind of really take away those frequencies that distinguish the words themselves. And when you've got the kind of hearing loss that you've got with the frequencies that are missing in that range, it really does wipe the slate. And I almost sometimes feel like you need to turn around to someone behind a counter and say, "Can you just write it down?" Because it doesn't matter how many times you say it; it's really hard. Do you find that?
Yeah, if you were looking at me as you were then, I was lip reading, but you imagine turning your mic off, going completely mute, and then I couldn't see your lips. It's just one complete muffle. And you're right, with deaf awareness training, I mean, I'm lucky. I have an infusion every 6 weeks, and the nurses either remove their masks or lower them to be able to talk to me. But this doesn't happen everywhere. And the places where a member of staff faces a person, the public, this is where the deaf awareness training should come in, so that they understand. I say, look, I'm deaf, I can't hear you. A lot of people wear a lanyard with maybe a badge or a sign on saying, I'm deaf, I can't hear you, I can't lip read. People are taking notice of that, but there's many that don't want to wear those. And it's just difficult for all of us. As I say, even with the implant, it's still just muffled. And it's just, you can't lip read.
We're nearly out of time. Claire, just going back to you, how can people protect their hearing if they're doing, if they're at work or in their leisure time, if they're doing things that could potentially damage their hearing? What can we be doing to help protect our hearing so we're not causing damage?
Well, for a start, one of the lucky breaks at the moment is nobody's going to big rock concerts because you can be deafened within 7.5 seconds if you stand too near a loudspeaker, and that hearing doesn't come back. So avoid listening to music. Follow all the guidelines on your phone and any equipment that you have to not try and override it. Don't be clever trying to override the systems that cut out the volume, because that is potentially damaging, and you may not know that till later on in your life when you suddenly panic and think, I wish I hadn't done that. As we said earlier with surfers, protect your ears. Literally, you're not going to go around with sort of earmuffs in the whole time. But I think just being aware, like even a night out in a noisy pub, which again isn't happening at the moment. If you feel any tingling in your ears, that's actually already a bad sign. So remove yourself from that environment. So like say, even if you go to a noisy pub often enough and you're struggling to hear the conversation, then that actually is potentially having some damage. But it's things when you're young that you don't think about it, and as you get older you suddenly go, oh, I wished I'd done that. I mean, I can't think of anything. Jamie might come back with more specific ideas, but I would say in terms of, I know certainly he was talking about the forces earlier. Sometimes it's very hard for people to do their job when they're advised to wear the appropriate protection, and that's a real catch-22, because I would say we'll always go for wearing protection, but there are some jobs that are kind of really very, very tricky, because you might need to be able to hear orders from somebody else. So if you've got the ear mufflers on, then you don't hear maybe safety orders. So that's a bit of a catch-22. But also if in your workspace you feel that you're putting yourself into any potential danger, then actually you need to speak to your team members, because there are a lot of environments that cause deafness that people don't actually realize. So if you're worried, then actually speak to your boss and have that conversation to say, it concerns me that I'm working in a loud environment. And we always think about deafness as being caused by loud noises. It's not necessarily. It can just be vibration. And I mean, I didn't mention earlier, but I think hairdressers, nobody really talks about hair salons, but when they all open up again, if you're in a big hair salon and there's 2-3 hair dryers going all day long, then actually that's likely to cause damage to your hearing. And I don't know really what the easy answer to that is, but I imagine there's a lot of people who've worked in hair salons who might have found that they potentially cause damage to their ears. So worth reading up on any job that you're doing, or any sport. What protection can I use to protect my hearing?
Claire and Jamie, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us on Chaos Radio and talking about this really important subject. And we really appreciate you. And hopefully you can come back again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks. That's Claire and Jamie there. And if you'd like to get in touch with Hearing Loss Cornwall, they've got a phone number and a text number and an email address on their website, and that's hearinglosscornwall.org.uk.